What's up, you guys? My name is Levi with Alliteration Gaming, and today I have another very cool deck profile. We are revisiting Mr. All Might 2 himself, but this time we're going to be doing him under the good symbol. So this is the deck I was originally going to be taking to Omaha before I was offered casting it. So this time we're doing under the good symbol, and it's very much centered around the combo of these two throws and the power of the rest of the throws in the good symbol. But before we get on to the rest of the deck, we should just go over All Might 2. So this is going to be his second appearance on the channel, but this is a very different type of deck, so I'm going to go ahead and explain him one more time. He is a 6-hander with 29 health, and he's got two very cool abilities. The first one is he can discard the top 4 cards of your deck to give your attack 2 damage. And then if it's blocked, the next one also gets 2 damage. So this is kind of where the main strategy comes in, where we're piling damage on all of our throws, and the more our opponent blocks them, the bigger the next ones get. They start stacking +4 on the next one, everything after the first one. It gets really out of hand really fast, and it's kind of our main win condition. And then the other ability he has is you can discard a momentum to draw a card, and then if this attack is not blocked, you draw another card. So this works on you or your opponent's attacks. So if they have something that you plan on taking, you can draw 2 cards with it, and then you kind of give them the pressure of, if they don't block your attack, you get to draw 1 more card. So it kind of forces the stacking the damage on the next one, right? And obviously, since all of our throws are guaranteed damage, sans, wall plays and stuff like that, and they're guaranteed momentum, so it means guaranteed draw the cards. So we are just a absolute hand size machine. So I'm going to put him up here, and then we're going to kind of get onto the attack. So the first 2 attacks I kind of want to talk about together. We have 4 copies of Invincible Clasp and 4 copies of Facepalm Takedown. So these things go really hand in hand. These are both of the new promo throws. So we'll go over them individually and then how they work together. So the first one, Invincible Clasp, is a throw that says you can lose 2 health to give it 3 damage, and you can pitch a momentum to go ahead and cancel an ability that gets activated during this enhanced step. So this is really nice because basically you lose 2, give it 3, you All Might, you make it an 8 damage throw. If it came in after a blocked one, it's a 10 damage throw, so that's a lot of guaranteed damage that stacks up over time. And then if they try to mess with it in any way, like damage resets or stuff like wall playing, you can go ahead and pitch momentum to go ahead and cancel their responses. A nice uninteractive throw here, which is exactly what we'd like. And then Facepalm Takedown is really good as well. It is a 2 high for 6 throw that says if you've dealt damage, combo with a high block enhanced to give it 2 damage and stun 1. So if they blocked the first one, either this one or our other high block throw, it's going to come in at 10 damage in total, because +2 from All Might and then +2 from its own enhance. So it becomes a 10 damage throw, and then you All Might enhance on itself to make it a 12 damage throw with stun 1, which is kind of ridiculous. Then it's also got an All Might enhance to give their check to block it -2. It's very slow, so that's not often very relevant. What we more so care about is the combo enhance. It just being a 12 damage throw in this deck is really crazy. So basically, this and this is just a guaranteed 10 damage, because you're going to make this one 8, and you're going to make this one 12. Half of that is, 10, right? So they full block both of them, and then they take 10. That's really disgusting. A 7-hander, that's half their life total, and then one of them they don't get to interact with. So it's really strong, and that's kind of like the whole general game plan of the deck, is just providing the opponent with really unfavorable situations that they can't do a whole lot about, even if they're perfect blocking us all day. So continuing with that theme, we have 4 copies of Reverse Throw. This is a 2 mid for 5 throw. Let me bring the XR in. That says if it deals 5 or more damage, you get to draw a card. That's all it does. It's very good. Obviously, All Might's gonna make it 7 damage. If it comes in after a blocked attack, it's gonna be an auto 9, which means it's gonna deal 5 and draw you a card. So it's very free. It's gonna go to the momentum, and you can potentially draw 2 cards off of it. And again, you can just see where the absolute monstrous hand size that this character in tandem with all of these throws and these guaranteed momentums really creates a pretty disgusting scenario where it's really hard for you to not just keep drawing all your throws and throw them to death. And then to round out the throws, we play 4 copies of Overhead Reversal. This is kind of the underwhelming throw of the deck, but it is a throw, so it's just powerful by nature. It's also a low, which is really interesting. It has an ability where you can build a foundation with a printed difficulty of 0 from your discard pile committed. So this is pretty nice. There's some neat little plays we can do with that. There's some nice targets for this in the deck. We don't run as many as I'd like to in favor of other foundations. So this doesn't always go off, but it is nice when it does. Otherwise, it's just a throw. We can make it 6 damage with All Might. If it comes in after a block when it's 8 damage, another guaranteed 4. It's also a high block, meaning Facepalm Takedown gets to combo enhanced with it as well as Invincible Class, making that whole kind of combo a little more consistent, right? So it's just good by that nature. Just a 4 diff throw is just really good to have in the deck. And then for some more attacks, we are out of throws, but we do play 4 copies of Confident Counter-Strike. This card's really, really off the charts. It's a 5 mid for 4 that says when you block with it, you can respond to make your opponent lose 2 health, or they can discard a card to cancel the effect. This is just really, really, really gross on a 1 mid block. It's just like really, really putrid. It kind of just makes your whole game plan even more valuable because they almost always have to discard, because losing 2 health against a throw deck is like not exactly what you want to do. So they almost have to always discard a card, which is just quite powerful. And then it also has an enhance. That says if your last one was blocked, this gets +3 damage. So obviously in All Might, if the last one was blocked, this one gets +2 as well. So it's going to get +5. And then we can All Might enhance on it on itself for a total of +7 damage. So it can come in randomly at any point in time as a 5 mid for 11 if they blocked your last one, which is just really, really gross. Most of the times you will just hold this card in your hand, and if they just like commit all out to block your throws so that they're only taking half, you can just send in this one at the end for basically the most free 11 damage ever. Sometimes it kills them, or if that's not a situation they put themselves in, you can just go ahead and hold it and then block with it for its really, really ridiculous unblock effect. And then our last attack to round out the deck is 4 copies of Hardened Shot. This is a pretty age-old attack here. 4 low for 5 with Breaker 1, lets you destroy a face-down foundation to build the top. So if you check bad on it and commit a face-down, it essentially resets 1. So it's really like a 4 diff. But the main thing is that when it's blocked, they discard a card. So you can make it a 7 damage move, 9 if it comes in after a blocked one, and it's kind of like they have to block that, right? Taking 7 or 9 against a throw deck is really, it's really not ever a super feasible option. So it's just really, really nice. Forces 2 cards out of their hand and then makes your next throw even bigger, or they just take 7 and you call it a day. It's definitely like the least impressive attack in the deck in the grand scheme of things, but we're playing a really, really big deck, so we need to play more attacks to round out a total of 24. So that's kind of the main reason why it's in there. Before we move on to the foundations, let's go ahead and talk about the actions. So we're playing 4 copies of Capture Evildoers. This card's really, really crazy. It's a 1 mid with Breaker 1, and it says that you can enhance, remove a rival momentum, and then if you do remove it, you steal a momentum for yourself. Obviously, this is super good in our character because it just instantly replaces itself, draws us more cards, and we get to selectively get rid of like a Jolt or a Grav Lift or anything really, really important to the air decks and their momentum. So it's just really, really good. Most of the time, when playing against this character or just seeing this card in general, your opponent will just stop taking momentum, which is also completely fine because it's got a second ability where you can form and discard a momentum to get 3 cards out of your card pool. Which is really, really good, especially against stuff like Mineta and the likes. In general, though, it's just a really, 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 really good ability that you can rely on when they're not taking momentum to try and counter this ability. And then we play 2 copies of Plus Ultra. When you block with it, you reduce their speed to 0 on a +5 mid. And then, of course, it's a set 1 character first enhance to pitch momentum and double an attack speed or damage. Obviously, this is very, very good on our throws. For example, Facepalm Takedown, if they block the first one, is going to come in at 8. You're going to first enhance, make it 16, and then give it the other 4, so it ends up as a 20 damage throw, which is pretty disgusting. Now, one thing is, you really are not allowed to do that against symbols that so basically you're never going to do this if they have some kind of stat reset on board that you can't answer, and even if they don't, if they're playing a Faith Shield symbol, you should never do this because then if it gets Faith Shield blocked, you're just like very, 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 very sad. It's a huge waste of resources, so you're only going to do this against certain decks. There are a lot of Faith Shield symbol decks running around. Life and Water are like probably the 2 most prominent symbols in the meta right now, I would say. And then Earth is pretty around there too. So that's why we only play 2, but you definitely side the rest when you are against decks that are a little more vulnerable to that type of combo. So that's the action lineup. It is 24 attacks and 6 actions. And now let's go ahead and get onto the foundations. So first thing we do is we play 4 copies of Passing the Torch because it's Passing the Torch. Commit to draw a card, or if you have no cards in hand, you draw 2 cards instead. This is a very, very, very long game focused deck because we're just trying to chip them down incrementally as we go. So most of the time we are building into high deadlock game states, and having multiple Passing the Torch is what really, really makes or breaks you when you're in those game states. So you just kind of want as many on your board as possible so that you're just never in a late game scenario where you're like, I need to draw this many throws to kill them. You always want to be able to draw as many cards as you can. Next, we play 4 Specialist with Sounds. Response, when they play an attack, you can commit it. to give their attack -3 speed, and when you check it, you can go ahead and peek at the top card of your deck. You reveal it, it is public knowledge, but very, very, very good card. The incidental peek is very, very nice for setting up your turns, or for setting up draws. With All Might, you have a ton of draw power in this deck, so if you use something bad on top, it's pretty easy to draw it if you want it, and then obviously -3 speed for a commit is just crazy. One of the best defensive pieces in the game, and we do like to be very defensive in this deck. Next, we have 4 copies of Taiyaki Fanatic. So this thing says response when they play an enhance on an asset or foundation. You can blow this up to cancel that ability. Really, really, really good. And then Deadlock Enhance, you can destroy it to make your rival discard a card. Again, we don't have a lot of Deadlock under the good symbol, so this is a really, really valuable ability. But then also just being able to destroy it to cancel abilities. This is like 99% of the time, this is going to do nothing but cancel wall clings all day, but it's also going to cancel any other stat resets that can kind of mess up your game plan, right? Make a big throw. Oh, I want to short circuit it down. I want to You're So Obvious it down, etc., etc. And in general, there's a lot of very powerful, most of the time, very, very powerful flip or remove abilities on non-spam foundations is what you're going to be targeting with this card. You kind of have to 4x it just so you can when you're against a water or a life deck, start the game by going, hey, I've got 4 Taiyakis, you got 4 wall clings. That's kind of how I work around those game states. And then Faith Shield, there's sadly no workaround to, and it is very annoying because it also stops your combos for your face palms. But sadly, there's not a workaround for that other than they only have 4 Faith Shields at most for the game because it does remove itself. But Taiyaki is there to solve basically everything else. Then we play 3 copies of First Impressions. This card is kind of sus, I'm not gonna lie. This card is, in most scenarios, pretty bad. It is a first enhance flip. If it's the first attack of the turn, you can give it 3 damage, and then if it's blocked, the next one gets 3 speed. So this is actually quite good in our deck because it lets us give 3 damage on our first throw, which, because we're All Might, we're actually giving 5 to it in total, which means our reverse throw can be opened with and still deal 5. And in general, it's usually basically free, at least 2 free damage getting across, which for a flip is pretty nice. Other than that, it doesn't have a lot of applications. The 3 speed is kind of nice because then if you do that on a clasp or an overhead and then they block it and then you sit in the facepalm does come in as a 5 high and then stuns 1, and then they have -2 to their check to block it, so it's actually a little difficult to block. And then obviously, if you can catch them with their pants down, it's really good on a confident counter-strike, right? Because it'll come in as an 8 mid for 11, which is actually kind of spooky. So it's a pretty okay card within the context of this deck. And then we play 3 copies of Harden. This is just a commit for +2 damage, or if it's a hardened attack, it gives it 3 damage. We only have the one hardened attack, and most of the time we won't use it on it just because they're probably having to block it already, but it is nice when it comes up. Most of the time this is just there for a free 2 damage on our throws, and it's a very handy block effect that you can respond with to give the next attack -2 damage. It's a nice card. There's a lot of really, really, high overloading decks, high zone attack overloading decks around, so it's just a good card for that reason and that reason only. Then for the spams, we got 4 copies of Manly Passionate Guy. This is just a really, really, really good card. Response flip when you block with a foundation, build it face down. Obviously, really, really good with Harden because it's got an on block effect. Obviously, building any of our foundations down is going to be really, really, really good. That's another reason why we're a little less reliant on plus ultra blocking in this deck, because most of the time if we're blocking mid, we want to block with this or one of our breaker 1s for some nice on block value, or we want to be blocking with a foundation to be able to manly it down. But yeah, just a crazy card. Obviously, everyone knows Manly Passionate is good. Another pretty mandatory 4 of is Destined for Mainstream Success. Flip and name a card type. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it's that card type, it gets added to your hand. You pretty much just always name attack with this, and then you either get an attack for free, or you confirm there's a good check on top of your deck. I like to wait until I'm in a position where I'm like, okay, I want to play another attack, but only if I'm going to check well for it. So I'll name attack, and then if it's a foundation, I'm okay with this because now I know I can play my next attack with basically 0 risk, which is really, really nice. Another really nice addition to the defensive game plan of the good symbol in set 2 is 4 high-value targets. This says when you're committing this card to pass a block check, it counts as 2 foundations. Really, really, really powerful. And it also says when one of your foundations would be destroyed, you can basically destroy this foundation instead. So it kind of protects some of your more important things. It's also a very important card in itself, though. So there's honestly only a few things that I would want to keep over this one, but it's still a really, really good card. Just counting as 2 foundations when you're blocking. It's just it's a very, very, very blatantly powerful ability. Next, we have 4 copies of Manly Friendship. This just says once per turn, an attack gets +1 or -1 damage. This is a really good card because obviously free damage on all of our throws is good. If our throw is ever at an even number of damage, +1 is going to make it an odd number, which is going to result to 1 free damage because now it's, you know, half block or block fully and then rounding up on the half damage. So it's really good there. If you have 2 of them out, it's really cool because you can open with your reverse throw and make it 9 damage, so it draws a card no matter what. It's just a really good card, and then combined with stuff like Harden, it can result in a lot of damage reduction on our opponent's turn, which is just really handy, especially against their throw decks. So really good. Next, we have 4 copies of Bonds of Friendship. This is mostly just in here because it's a 1 high block with a 6 check, but it can also flip to give a Fury attack -3 damage. There's a decent amount of those in the meta right now, especially within the set 2 card pool, so it's a good card nonetheless, but we really just like to check 6s all day because we always have to play Facepalm Takedown on a 6, so that's really nice for that reason. Then we play 4 copies of Self-Sacrifice. This is kind of like Bonds, where it's really in here for like a 1 low, but it does have a very nice effect to destroy a foundation to give +1 or -1 damage. So again, this is really good to even out, or should I say odd out the numbers on our throw damages, because if it translates from going to an even number to an odd number, it is 1 whole free damage that they're having to now take because they half block and then round up. So it's really good for that. It can also keep us out of deadlock if we like really have to. There are some deadlocks that are just like way too threatening to play in, so you have to be very mindful of the game state. This card is also really cool with our overhead reversal throw, because the only 0 we play is this next card for It Can't Be Fixed. So if you don't have another 0 in the discard pile to build with overhead, you can use Self-Sacrifice, pop the It Can't Be Fixed for +1 damage, and then overhead reversal build it back in. So that's a really cool play that you can do with this card as well. And then the last card in the deck is 4 copies of It Can't Be Fixed. This is a 1 high block on a 0 diff, but it also says when you commit something because of your rival's effect, you can flip it and build the top face down. Really good, especially because, like I said, like you can flip it for that, build 1, and then Self-Sacrifice, blow it up, and then overhead it in, back face up, and the effect is playable while committed, so it's live right away. So the second, like this is really good. One of my favorite strategies, like when I'm fighting like a big stun deck, or like something like Todoroki 2, I'll simply just like be looping these forever. So like his stun 2 every turn is really like, in the long run, it's actually hurting him because I'm just getting so much free build out of it, and then it makes your stuff that interacts with your face sounds a lot better, like your Hardened Chop. So it's really good for that reason. So that is the main deck. I believe this is a whopping 76 cards with 24 attacks. So like the ratios are also very balanced, and the block zones are also incredibly balanced. You have about 20 highs and lows, and then about 30-ish mids, somewhere amongst the reality of all that. So it's really good. You're kind of okay half blocking in this deck a lot because you have a big chunky 29 health pool, and you have really powerful mid block effects. So like really surviving is not an issue. You have some really insane defensive abilities. Overall, I think this deck is very strong. I think this is probably the throw deck. You know, everyone's kind of really hot on the throw decks right now, but I think this is the one that I've seen talked about the absolute least. Which is really surprising. I think it's at worst at least as good as Mineta, if not a little better. I think it has less defense against the opposing throw decks, but it does have its fair share of damage reduction, and it is a lot more. It's a lot more explosive. Like the other throw decks are there to play a very long game where they chip you down, and as a result, you don't really have to respect their aggro as much. That's kind of the thing about a throw deck. But this one is like, no, you still have to block everything. Because like the half block is like 4 or 5 damage all the time. So you still have to like totally respect the output of this deck. Even if you know, like you can't just not plan on blocking anything, you know, like you do against other throw decks. It's like everything is like 8, 9, 10 damage. So it's really threatening no matter what. So you have to play against it very differently than you do the other ones. And I think that's a very powerful aspect of picking this as a throw deck. I think there's going to be a lot of this in Vegas. I think this could very well top and or win the event. I think it's one of the most resonant sleeper throw decks right now that you're going to see. And the last thing I want to talk about, speaking of events, is I do have a sideboard prepared for this deck. I'm citing 2 copies of Plus Ultra. The other 2 are just there for anything that, you know, they have really big bombs that you struggle to deal with. And then also, if they're not playing a Faith Shield symbol and they don't have a lot of stat resets under their symbol, having 4 of this to just Plus Ultra double damage your throws all day is going to eat through so many characters. This is your main strategy against 7-handers that aren't on those symbols, so like stuff like Bakugo 2, right? you just literally nuke the world out of him. You're like, you literally just go like clasp, takedown, plus ultra it, and like he's at like 3 or 4 health now. Any other throw kills him. It's really, really, really threatening, and that's to be said for any 7-handers that are not under those wall cling faith shield symbols. Then we got 4 copies of You're So Obvious. This card says that you can pop it to return an attack to printed speed or damage, and then if it's a punch, it gets +2 to the stat that you didn't reset. So this is just really, really nice. This is nice against it's actually really nice against the mirror match, if anything, because you get to reset their big throws back down to printed. Good thing is you can also cancel with Taiyaki, so there's a nice back and forth there with stuff like that. But in general, again, it's just more stat resets in the deck combined with plus ultra. Decks reliant on like throwing huge bombs at you are gonna like really struggle to get those across, which is obviously really, really good for a late game, long game focused deck. And another neat application is we can also use it on our own attacks, so it can be like, okay, destroy, return my punch to its printed speed, and then give it 2 damage, right? So you can kind of like get that little extra bit of damage pump in there as well. Obviously, that's only if they didn't block the last one, and it's not coming in with a +2, because otherwise you're just going to negate that. And then the other 4 sideboard slots, I feel like can really be whatever you want. I'm citing 2 resistance. You can flip it to cancel stun abilities and commit it to give the next attack -2. I think it's a nice low card. It's also got a breaker 1. It's like a very okay card. It just doesn't really make the cut in the good symbol foundation lineup anymore for me. Now that we have stuff like Manly Friendship and High Value Target, I think we're just a little too stacked now in terms of our power foundations. But I totally understand if you disagree. I think it's still a good sideboard nonetheless, for just like the decks that are really trying to string the little attacks on you. Chaining resistance and like hardened DR, especially with Manly Friendship now, is still really, really good. And then being able to cancel anything with stun 2 is really, really nice for when you don't see your it can't be fixed. It makes a nice coagulation of stun countering. So I think you could even side all 4 if you really wanted to. You could main 2, side 2. I think those are all very respectable options. And then I also really like to side the other harden, the other first impressions, because like you have 3 and 3, and you can go between 4 and 2. 4 hardens if you're against decks that like really, really want to swing high at you. 4 first impressions for vice versa. You don't really want to stack these, but like it's kind of okay if you do. You can just only use them once every turn as you go on, right? So as long as you don't have like 4 of them and you don't think the game's gonna last 4 more turns, it's totally fine. I also think that you could be siding the Monoma Foundation somewhere within this lineup, just to have more stat resets, but I feel like with 4 plus Ultra and 4 You're So Obvious, you kind of have enough. But if you feel like you're just going to see big bombs all day, once again, it's a sideboard, so it's much more of a local meta call, if anything. And in the context of Vegas, we really don't know what we're going to see at Vegas. The meta is not super established yet, so this is more of just kind of like a bread and butter base sideboard lineup, and some suggestions for other options that you could play as well. But you guys, that is it for this deck. It's kind of it's a little bit of a simpler deck compared to some of the other stuff we profiled, but I think the simplicity is one of its biggest strengths. It's very, very straightforward. It very much just kind of sits there and does its thing, and for the most part, there's not much you can do about it other than attempt to defeat him first before All Might just executes his game plan of playing however many throws equal to double whatever your health is, right? And even then, right, he might get across more than that, depending on, and he's kind of just focused on answering you as much as he can, and again, playing his a very solitaire style focused game, which I think is going to be really, really strong within a very unknown meta. That's like the strongest aspect of this deck going into a competitive environment. But that's it, you guys. That's all I have to say about this All Might 2 Good Symbol Throw deck. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Levi out.